and welcome to my channel. I haven't posted here in a while, mostly because I've been very busy writing and editing, but I thought I would post a video today about my historical romance series, The Stanton Legacy. There's 3 books out in this series already. The latest one, The Blue Stockings Secret Obsession, is now out on paperback and on Kindle Unlimited. And I thought I would just give you an exposition about each of those 3 books in the series, and then give you some information about what's to come next in books 4 and 5 of the series. So, without any further ado, let me start with the first book, which is The Viscount's Scandalous Affair, which is set in the late Regency period. It's actually sort of, it's in 1835, so that's considered post-Regency, but it's not quite Victorian yet, because Victoria had not come to the throne quite yet in 1835. That was 2 years later, I think, in 1837. Anyway, I digress. This is the first romance, and it features one of those tropes that I really love in romance, because it's basically the story of my life. It is the idea of a plain, dowdy, yes, a big dowdy looking heroine, and she is overlooked by everybody. Nobody really notices her, and she dreams of, finding that great love, like, most of us do. And she just wishes that somebody would really see her for who she is, see the fire and passion that beats within her chest, under this dowdy exterior. So there's our main character, Charlotte. She's poor, she's an orphan, she's been left at the mercy of her wealthier relatives, and she meets this character called Viscount Stanton, and he is the antithesis of who she is in his life experience. He is to the manor born. He's the he's the son of a very powerful and rich earl. He's handsome, charming. He basically has the world at his feet, and he should be, a very happy man, but he isn't, because he too is missing something in his life, and not just the love of his life, but his life is dominated by his father, who is cold and exacting and authoritarian, and who has these expectations from him that he needs to find political high office and marry somebody of his class, and follow the path that's been set out for him. And so he is also dissatisfied with his life, but on the surface it looks like he has everything. And they meet in London. She's staying with her wealthier relatives. They've taken pity on her and given her hearth and home with them, and they meet. And for her, obviously, she's bedazzled by him at first sight, and who wouldn't be? He is handsome, charming, he has it all. Well, he dismisses her. He takes one look at her and thinks, dowdy, poor relative, and moves on. But then, obviously, we wouldn't have a story if that's where it all ended. Circumstances do bring them together. And this is also where I really, really am quite in love with this heroine, Charlotte, because although it looks like she is very powerless in her life, she's poor, destitute, at the mercy of her relatives, she doesn't have looks. She's also got the problem of her heritage on her maternal side. Her mum was a Spanish tradesman's daughter, so in the eyes of the Tour, she is not quite making the grade. So everything seems to be, against her finding happiness. but she takes matters into her own hands, and I really do like that in a heroine. Somebody who is not passive, but when she spies an opportunity, she takes it. And I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but she does proposition the Viscount for an affair, a short-lived affair with an expiration date, because she knows that his father wants him to marry this rich heiress, and so that's going to happen sometime in the near future. But in that small gap of time, he is free and single. He's just broken off with his current mistress, and she knows it because she's found out. She's made it her business to find out. So she propositions him, and this is the deal. She says, give me an affair to remember, something that I can look back on in my spinster years, that I've experienced, you know, passionate kisses and sex and all of the above, you know, stuff that would be beyond her purview. And in return, I will give you my body. And I hope, despite the fact that I'm not the most beautiful person in the world, that there's still something in it for you. And he's intrigued. By this point, he's already begun to see more of what she is than initially was the case. And he takes her up on that offer, and they start a passionate affair. But obviously it's got an expiration date, and when we get to that expiration date, then things take a dramatic turn, because by then obviously the both of them have fallen in love with each other, but there's still obstacles in the way. How are they going to overcome them? Read on and find out. So that's the Viscount's scandalous affair. I will say this also about this book, because I've read some of the lovely reviews that have been given, and I'm just so flattered by the attention that this book has had. So thank you for all of your reviewers. But there have been one or two criticisms which I would like to address now with you. First one is that it gets to a slow start, and I accept that. But I think you do need to persevere with it, because I do need to set the scene. I do need to set the whole circumstances behind who each of these two characters are before they meet, before, you know, their affair begins. So do persevere, and you will be rewarded, I promise you. The other criticism which I would like to address here, which I think is slightly less fair, is that a lot of people did not like the male character, Frank Viscount Stanton. They found him arrogant and cruel. And yes, he is both of those things at the beginning of the story. But, you know, I don't want to create cardboard cutout characters who are perfect, because, I mean, I find those characters very boring and not very believable either. You have to think about his situation. He is born to immense wealth, immense privilege. He has not had much affection in his life because his mother died when he was young, and as we said, his father is cold and autocratic and very demanding of him. His life has been, in other respects, has been easy. Conquests like this, you know, women flock at his feet. Of course he's going to be arrogant and entitled. He wouldn't be human otherwise. But he's still dissatisfied with that life internally. But he hasn't been able to externalize that dissatisfaction yet. So he's still towing the line and doing what the dutiful son should do at the beginning of the story. But he goes through a journey. He does. And I think he redeems himself at the end. I like Frank. So sorry for those who didn't particularly like him. But, you know, nobody's perfect. And I think what matters most is not where they are at the start, but where they end up being. Give it a try. So that was book 1 in the series, The Viscount's Scandalous Affair. Now let me introduce you to the next book in the series, The Vixen's Unlikely Marriage. And now we are moving on to the next generation, because the action in this book takes place 25 years later. So we're on to the next generation of the Stanton family. And the main protagonist here is Grace Stanton. She's not actually the daughter of the first couple in the first book. She is the Viscount's niece. And she is also another one of those characters who a lot of my readers have had trouble with, because, again, she's not perfect. She is a hedonist. She's sexually experienced, which maybe is slightly shocking for the time, but not unheard of. You know, Victorian women had premarital sex. It's a fact. They did. Not all of them, but some of them did. So it's not totally unheard of for that to happen. She's beautiful, again, coddled in a very affectionate, loving family. She has everything going for her, and she's quite self-centered, just looking for her own pleasure, her own, she's sort of very self-absorbed in that case. But also she's only 18. And, you know, at that age, teenagers do tend to be more self-absorbed than they are later on in life. It's just a fact. So I think we shouldn't be too critical of her. But also, when I was writing this story, I was, and I know this sounds very pretentious, but I was very minded of Jane Austen's Emma, the character she wrote in Emma. And very famously, Jane Austen said, I'm going to write a character who no one but me is going to much like. But we did end up liking Emma very much, despite her character flaws. And I mean, I think Emma is far more unlikable than Grace, personally. She was quite interfering and meddling with other people, whereas Grace, she doesn't interfere and meddle with other people so much as just looks for her own pleasure. And she's super loyal to her family, very loving to her family. So for the people she loves, she's super loyal. Other people, she doesn't really much care. She's out there looking for guys, really interested in men, and who could blame her? I was really interested in men at that age. I'm still really interested in men. So anyway, that's Grace, very imperfect being. She goes through a journey too. And so I hope that by the end, and I know most of my readers by the end liked her a lot more than they did at the beginning. Don't judge her too much. She's only 18. Again, she's only had, you know, good things in life happen to her. She's not had to go through any stress or trauma whatsoever. And, you know, all she wants is to have a bit of a good time. Come on, don't judge her too much. But unfortunately, the good times have to come to an end because she gets knocked up and has to enter into a marriage of convenience with Benedict Sedgwick. And he is the antithesis of her. He is a clergyman, penniless, and he, upon first meeting her, is bedazzled and falls in love. But he knows he doesn't stand a chance, a little bit like Charlotte in our first book. No chance that she's ever going to look twice at him. But he finds his opportunity because she comes to him for help, saying, I'm pregnant, help me, what can I do? And he goes, marry me. And so they enter into this marriage of convenience. He is a virgin, totally unexperienced with women, shy, a little bit of a nerd, a lot of a nerd actually. And the drama of this story is how they come together, how these opposites come to really appreciate and love each other. And I won't give you any more spoilers, but our Benedict really does show himself worthy. He does things to prove just how much he loves this woman he's married. And for all her faults, from the minute they marry, she is loyal to him. No longer does she look at any other man. So let's give her credit where credit is due. And the story of how these two come together, I think, is touching, emotional, charming. Do give it a read. And then we come to book 3, which has just been released. It came out on the 6th of May, and it is The Blue Stocking's Secret Obsession. Now, the main male character in this story is Benjamin Stanton. He is actually the second son of our couple in the first book. He's the second son of Charlotte and Frank from book 1 in the series. And there's lots of issues going on here. There's relationships with his brother that are part of the story. He's got an older brother who seems to have it all, who's handsome, who's going to inherit everything, while he, as the second son, is going to not get that much. So there's a little bit of a jealousy going on with his older brother. And he meets Sarah Cranshaw. She is the sister of the estate manager for the Stanton estate. So she is from a lower social order, and she is a blue stocking. She is very interested in science and engineering and astronomy, and she is a little bit, I would say, on the spectrum. She doesn't read social cues very well, and lives this very quiet, I'm not going to say unfulfilled, well, slightly unfulfilled life, because she does keep herself busy with all of her scientific experiments and projects. So she's not living a boring life, but definitely when it comes to, the opposite sex, it is unfulfilled. And she has a secret obsession for somebody called Mr. Templeton, who we actually met in book 2. He is the charming rogue of the village, very handsome, rich, wealthy, determined bachelor, who of course shows no interest in her. But still, she worships him from afar. And there is this, I think, quite amusing trope in this story, where every Sunday at church she sits in her pew and has a perfect view of Mr. Templeton for the half hour or so of the church service, and she spends that time ogling him. And that is pretty much the sum total of her obsession with this man, because he doesn't look twice at her. And then into this mix, she meets Benjamin Stanton. He's come from America, because this Stanton Legacy series is set in both America and England. We've got an Anglo-American family here, and he's come from America because his grandfather, the Earl of Stanton, that autocratic character we met in book 1, is on his deathbed. So he's come with the rest of his family to be with his dying grandfather, and that's when he meets Sarah Cranshaw. And I'm not going to spoil the circumstances of how they meet, but they strike up this odd type of friendship where they are incredibly honest with one another. They tell each other about their feelings, their hopes. He knows about her obsession for Mr. Templeton. And then he obviously has to return to America. So they start this long distance relationship by correspondence. They write each other letters, and they actually fall in love through the writing of these letters, because that honesty takes on a different level, where they are telling each other so many private things that they would never dream of saying in real life, but through the medium of letters they can open up. And so he, for example, introduces her to masturbation, and tells her to find her clitoris. And he regales her with all of his adventures, his sexual conquests, and she uses them as fodder for her fantasies. And so by day she is this dowdy spinster, blue stocking, and then at night she takes on a different life. She fantasizes herself into these scenarios that he's painted for her through his letters, and becomes this sexy hussy. So they have this relationship, and then obviously because he's in America at the time of the Civil War, there's that that comes into play. He volunteers for war, and obviously traumatizing experience for him. And then we come so for several years they have this correspondence, and then we come to the end of the war, where he realizes that he loves her and that he wants to win her, and so he comes back to England. But lo and behold, things have developed, because Mr. Templeton, who Sarah has worshipped from afar, suddenly takes notice of her. And so we get into a little bit of a love triangle situation. How are those two lovers going to resolve their romance? This, you know, is quite an emotional ringer of a story, I think, but also well worth the read, I hope. That's book 3. Just to say, because I forgot, is that books 1 and 2 are also out on audio, and I do put them regularly on Chirp Deals, as well as on my own website through BookFunnel, if you've used BookFunnel. And so, you know, I would really advise you to sign up to my newsletter, and then you will be always in the loop whenever there is a sale on those audiobooks. Great way to get into those stories through audio. I know a lot of you out there are now into audiobooks, and so am I, because, you know, I just love doing household chores, which are really boring, while I've got, you know, my wireless headphones on, and, you know, I'm listening to this great romance while doing these boring chores. Weeding the garden. Nobody enjoys weeding, I don't think. But when you're doing it with your audiobook on listen, then it becomes a much more pleasurable affair. So I know a lot of you are doing audiobooks these days. Those first 2 books are on audio, and there are lots of offers on there, or regular offers, so do look out for them. This book will soon be on audio too. It's going to be recorded in September. It should come out in October. And at the same time, hopefully, I will do a back-to-back recording of book 4 in the series. So book 4 on audio will come out very soon after this one. So look out for the next 2 books on audio coming your way very soon. They're narrated by an amazing actor called Philip Batley, who does a really great job of bringing those characters to life. So now I come to what happens next in the series, and we have got book 4, which I'm very busy writing, and I very much hope to release on 1st of July. I will confirm this to my subscribers very soon. Hopefully in my next newsletter I will have the pre-order link ready for the next book. And this next story in the Stanton legacy is going to be a departure for me, because it will be my first romance. And the 2 main characters in this story are Daniel Stanton, who is the older brother, the one who has it all, the older brother of Benjamin in this book. So Daniel Stanton, and the female, and the male interest, the other character in the story, is Ambrose Cranshaw, who is actually the brother of our blue stocking. It's kind of a workplace romance, really, because Ambrose is the land manager of the Stanton estate, and when Daniel Stanton inherits the estate on the death of that autocratic Earl of Stanton, he then becomes Ambrose's employer, and it's going to be an interesting one. The main premise of it is that Ambrose is very firmly in the closet. He is gay, and he is aware that he's aware that he's attracted to men, but he represses those feelings because he knows it's taboo in the society he's in, and also he's not got wealth or connections. He has to make his way in the world through his own endeavours, and so he cannot risk being labelled as gay or as a sodomite, as they would have called them in those days. So he's very firmly in the closet. And then we have Daniel Stanton, who is carefree, a little bit like Grace in book 2. He's got the world at his feet. He's rich, super handsome, the eldest son, so he's going to inherit all those riches, and he is sexually experienced. He has lots and lots of affairs with women, but he also has one homosexual experience with a man in his youth, and it's a one-off, so he writes it off as a slight aberration, but we get to see that he is bisexual, that he does have attraction for men, but he's not so bothered by it because he's also very attracted to women, and there's women all over the place that he can have affairs with, so he's not particularly sexually repressed, and those two meet. And for Daniel Stanton, it is, wow, fireworks at first sight. He wants Ambrose, and he realizes that one homosexual experience he had was not an aberration. He does have a latent desire for men as well as for women. He decides to go after Ambrose, and you can imagine Ambrose's reaction. Shuts him down. He doesn't want to hear about it because he is terrified. He is terrified of being unmasked as a sodomite. And so we have a romance in the works, which goes through the years. It's not going to be a quick fix for those two characters. I haven't yet worked out in my mind how I'm going to resolve the happily ever after, because obviously in the romance genre you want to have a happy ending, and definitely in all my books there has to be a happy ending. That's why I read romance. I want happiness for my characters, and yet obviously we're set in Victorian times. It's going to be a bit of a tricky one, but I'm up for the challenge. I will let you know more once that book is complete and I can start giving out advanced review copies of it. So watch out for that, it's coming soon. And then I'm just going to give you, to finish off this very long video, just give you a little bit of a primer on book 5. Book 5 will be the story, finally, of Mr. Templeton, who we've met in books 2 and 3 so far. That handsome rogue, who will also get his redemption story, and his love interest will be Isabella Stanton, the younger sister of Daniel Stanton in this book. More to come on that soon. I hope I've whet your appetite on this series, which I've really enjoyed writing, and the links for all of the books are in the description. I do hope you give them a try. Thank you. Speak soon.